Deep Space Nine's ending left Star Trek's galaxy safer, but only for 10 years. The Star Trek galaxy was left safer after Star Trek Deep Space Nine ended, but that hard-won peace only lasted for 10 years. After the ending of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, the USS Voyager returned home to Earth in the 2001 series finale of Star Trek Voyager, and Star Trek Nemesis happened 1 year later. Nemesis's dismal box office showing backburnered the Star Trek The Next Generation era for 18 years, when Star Trek's modern era caught up with the present in Star Trek Picard. Although Star Trek Picard Season 1 takes place in 2399, Picard's first episode, Remembrance, cleverly includes a flashback to the 2387 Romulan supernova from J.J. Abrams' Star Trek 2009, making the supernova a pivotal event in the prime timeline. Modern Star Trek shows Star Trek Lower Decks and Star Trek Prodigy, which take place in the 2380s, show what happened in the Star Trek timeline between the ending of Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Picard's 2387 flashback. The peace that seemed to follow the United Federation of Planets' victory in DS9's Dominion War wouldn't actually last as long as expected. The Federation won the Dominion War in Star Trek DS9. The Federation won Star Trek Deep Space Nine's Dominion War with the help of the Klingons and Romulans in a previously unthinkable alliance of galactic powers. These former enemies came together to defend Star Trek's Alpha Quadrant from the Gamma Quadrant's dominion after the discovery of the Bjorn wormhole connected the two quadrants. The Dominion sought to conquer the Alpha Quadrant as easily as they'd gained control of the Gamma Quadrant and made strong headway, thanks to Gul Dukat Markalemo pledging the Cardassians' loyalty to the Dominion early in the war. Allied Alpha Quadrant powers were led to victory by Star Trek Deep Space Nine's Captain Benjamin Sisko Avery Brooks and Colonel Kira Neri's Nanavisitor. Colonel Kira's assault on the Dominion's Cardassia Prime stronghold clinched the decisive win for the Federation. Following the capture of the female changeling Salome Jens, Constable Oda Renee Auberjonois returned to the Great Link to heal the Founders, who had been infected with Section 31's morphogenic virus. Although the Dominion ceased to be a threat, the war left scars on the Alpha Quadrant that would not fully heal. Star Trek Lower Decks begins in 2380, 5 years after the end of the Dominion War. Most of Lower Decks' main characters would have been at Starfleet Academy during the war, but Ensign Beckett Mariner Tawny Newsome graduated from the Academy before the Dominion War in 2371. Mariner was stationed on Deep Space Nine sometime during the 2370s, placing her on the front lines of the Dominion War right as tensions flared between the Federation and Dominion. Mariner's PTSD from the war manifests as self-sabotage, which may be a fairly common experience among Starfleet's junior officers in this era. After Lieutenant Commander Worf Michael Dorn slayed Chancellor Gowron Robert O'Reilly in Star Trek Deep Space Nine Season 7, Episode 22, Tacking into the Wind, Worf handed the title of Chancellor over to General Martek J.G. Hertzler. Martek was a far better choice to lead the Klingon Empire than Worf, thanks to Martek's humble origins, experience as a Dominion prisoner of war, and keen ability to connect with others as a high-ranking leader. Worf, to his credit, became the Federation ambassador to Konos. When Star Trek Deep Space Nine DS9 ended in 1999 with What You Leave Behind, it seemed to usher in a fragile peace for the galaxy. The Dominion War had ended, the Cardassians were broken, and Starfleet emerged, if not unscathed, at least still intact. For the first time in years, the Alpha Quadrant could breathe. But in true Star Trek fashion, peace was never meant to last forever. Within a decade, old enemies would stir, new powers would rise, and the sacrifices of DS9's crew would begin to erode. The cost of peace. DS9's finale was bittersweet. Benjamin Sisko, the emissary, had defeated Gul Dukat and sealed the Pa Wraith's fate, but at the cost of his mortal life. Bajor was spared from spiritual annihilation, but it remained politically adrift, still not a Federation member, still healing from occupation. The Cardassians were devastated after turning on the Dominion, and over 800 million of their people were killed in retaliation. The Dominion, now relegated to the Gamma Quadrant under Odo's reformed leadership, posed no immediate threat. On the surface, things looked calm. But the truth was, this peace was built on trauma and distrust. The scars of war were deep, and the political landscape was brittle. The Federation, Klingons, and Romulans had barely survived the Dominion War. Each had sacrificed greatly, and their alliances were more strategic than sincere. The war may have united them temporarily, but history suggested it wouldn't take much to drive them apart again. A decade of breathing room. The next 10 years after DS9's finale offered the rarest of luxuries in the Star Trek universe: time to rebuild. The Klingon Empire, with Marduk as Chancellor, became more stable than it had been in decades. The Romulan Star Empire, though always secretive, honored its Dominion War alliances, if only in name. The Federation turned inward, focusing on reconstruction, diplomacy, and expansion. This breathing room allowed for scientific progress, exploration, and political recalibration. Starfleet began new missions. Civilian life blossomed again. The Bajorans, once refugees and revolutionaries, slowly found their place in the galactic conversation. Former enemies like the Cardassians began paths toward redemption. And yet, the seeds of future conflict were already sown. Romulus and the Fall, the pivotal turning point, marking the end of DS9's fragile legacy, came in 2387, roughly 10 years after the events of What You Leave Behind. A supernova destroyed the Romulan homeworld, obliterating Romulus and Remus and destabilizing one of the Alpha Quadrant's greatest powers. As seen in Star Trek, Picard, this catastrophe became a flashpoint that unraveled what little unity remained. The Federation's failure to fully evacuate Romulan civilians ignited outrage. Trust fractured. The tenuous goodwill established during the Dominion War collapsed. The galaxy once again braced for instability. Had DS9's characters been in play, the outcome might have been different. Sisko's wisdom, Kira's fierce diplomacy, or Odo's link to the Dominion might have prevented the fragmentation. But time had moved on. DS9's heroes were gone, scattered, retired, or presumed dead. Without them, the institutions they held together began to falter. The return of isolationism. Following the Romulan tragedy, the Federation grew cautious, even isolationist. The hopeful optimism of the post-war period soured. Starfleet, once boldly exploring the final frontier, became more bureaucratic and defensive. We saw this vividly in Picard, a Federation no longer eager to embrace outsiders or risk its security for the sake of its ideals. This regression marked the full unraveling of DS9's peace. The Federation, once the beacon of galactic cooperation, had lost its luster. What had been a decade of growth gave way to paranoia and inertia. The Dominion's threat never returned, but that didn't matter. New enemies, synthetics, Fenris Rangers, power-hungry Romulan factions emerged to fill the void. The peace that DS9 bought with blood was never meant to last forever, but its short lifespan is a tragic reminder of how fragile diplomacy is in the Trek universe. Legacy carried an absence. Ironically, DS9's crew left no grand statues, no monuments, but their impact was profound. Odo healed the founders. Kira helped Cardassia rise from the ashes. Sisko became legend among the Bajorans. Yarrick, the spy tailor, became a reluctant ambassador for Cardassian rebirth. Their actions changed the galaxy. And yet the power vacuum left by their absence allowed the old cycles to begin anew. Without leaders like Sisko and Marduk actively steering the quadrant, lesser voices rose to fill the silence, often with less wisdom and more ambition. DS9 was never about happy endings.